Hello and welcome back. This time we are going to implement an enemy to our game and make a simple AI for it. Let's get going. So, to create our enemy, we need to add once again a new sprite to our game. And again, it is done the same way like every other time by inserting new object and picking the sprite right over here. And of course, we are going to name it to be SPR_enemy. And then we can click once again to open the editor. And here we are going to draw our enemy. Okay, and here is our enemy. And once again, I'm going to change the size to 32 by 32, like so. And then we can just add it to our layout. And next, to make our player move, we need to add a new behavior for it, and it's actually the same as the player has the platform behavior. And do you remember how we can add it? Yep, that's right. We go to the properties of the enemy and click the edit behaviors, add new behavior, and we find the platform behavior right over here. And currently, if we would run our game, the enemy will move exactly the same way as the player based on the inputs of the player. But that's something we don't want, and we can fix it by checking off the default controls option right in the platform properties. And now it should stay still even though the player is moving, like so. And before we make the enemy move, we must create a new instance variable for the enemy. And again, we can do it from here from the properties. Above the behaviors, there is instance variables, and we can edit our instance variables. Well, currently we have none. And we can press here to add a new instance variable. And what instance variables are? They are basically a way to save information of the objects in the game. Like in this case, we will save info about the enemy. And what we want to save is the fact that should it be moving towards right. So we can name our instance variable to moving right. Then we can choose the type. There's three options. Well, number, as the name suggests, it is a number that we can save. String, it's basically a letter or a sentence, basically a string of characters that we can save. If we check it, well, we can put the initial value can be something like hello world or something like that. And the number is number. And the boolean is actually what we need in this situation. It is only true or false. So there's only two states that the boolean can save. And currently we want to save the information, is the player moving right? So in that situation, we need only know if it's true or not. And for the initial value, let's set it to true, so the player will start to move towards right first when we start our game. And for that description, we can give it a small description if we want, but it's completely optional. And I think in this case we don't need it. And now we can close it. And now we can make the enemy move based on this instance variable. So let's jump on the event sheet. So we need to add a new event by clicking right here. And we are going to choose the enemy as a object of the condition. And here should be something called isBoolean instance variable set. And here, if we click it, you can see that moving right instance variable is right over here, and it's actually the only one because we don't have any other instance variables that are Boolean type inside our enemy's instance variables. So we can check this. Now we check if the player is not the player, if the enemy is moving right, then we just have to make it move to the right, and we can do it by once again choosing the enemy. And here on the platform section, there's something called simulate controls or control. And if we check it, we can check what direction we want to move our enemy. It can be left, right, or we can make it jump. But in this situation, we want to use the right. And now we press done. And before we check the game or play the game to see if it really works, let's make another event for checking if the moving is not, or this is not true. So basically we need to invert this. And then we simulate control towards the left. And again, we can do it quite easily. We can just press right over here to make it the whole event go white. Then we press Ctrl C, Ctrl V. So we have the same event here. We copied it. Then we click it right over here. Only the condition is highlighted. Press I to invert it. And here we are just double clicking and changing it to the left. And now the player, not the player, the enemy will move towards left or right depending is this instance variable true or not. And currently the enemy should be moving towards the right all the time until it hits, well, goes outside of the layout. So it works, but of course it doesn't turn left anywhere because we don't say to it that you should turn left. And that's something we do next. And we do it by creating once again a new sprite for the trigger area where the enemy should turn. So let's make a new sprite. And for this, well, let's make it blue, like so, and draw a small arrow so we know that it should be moving or turning towards left, like so. And oh, we forgot to name the sprite, but it's okay, we can just rename it right in the projects window. So let's call it SPR underscore move, not moving, turn left. And let's make this a bit smaller and put it somewhere around there. And well, currently this doesn't look that good in our game. So like if we play our game, we can see this huge arrow in the field, but we can make it invisible by going to the properties of the turn left sprite. And under here there is initially visible option. If we tick it off, we can still see the arrow in our editor window, but if we play the game, it will be invisible. So that way, when we are building levels, it's good that we see where our trigger areas are, but when we are playing the game, we don't have to see it at all. Okay, and next, let's make the enemy move when it hits this sprite. So again, we need to make a new event where our enemy is colliding with the turn left sprite, and then we just change the moving right to be false. And you can try to do it on your own, but the way we can do it is adding new events, choose the enemy, and the on collision with another object. Here we choose the sprite turn left and press done. And for the action, again we choose the enemy, and here is set boolean. We choose that, and for the moving right, we want to make it false. And we press done. And now we can check it if it turns. Looks like it, the enemy will turn. But again, we don't have anything to turn it back towards the right. So we need to do the same thing, but for the turn right sprite. And well, we don't have it yet. So there's one way we can do that, is to right click on the turn left and press clone. So now we have SPR turn left 2. But well, we want to rename this to turn right. And not that one, let's double click to turn right. And here we can just mirror our arrow so it will point towards the left, no, towards the right. Then we can add it right over here. Maybe let's make them a bit smaller still, like so. And then for the event sheet, there's actually one really handy way we can do that. Again, we want to copy and paste this. And if we choose this condition, we can press R here. So we can pick the object that we want to replace in this condition. And the one we want to replace is the turn left to be the turn right. So now we have the same condition, but the sprite that we check the collision on is different. Of course, we can do it just by double clicking it, going here and changing it to whatever we want. But that's one shortcut that is nice to know. Pressing R, you can replace anything in the condition or in the action also. But here, if we press R, it says that there's nothing to replace. So here we need to double click it and change the false to true and press done. And now if we play our game, yeah, it will turn left and right when it hits our trigger areas. And here you can see that because we cloned this turn left to be the turn right, the initially visible option is off automatically, because if you clone something, it will clone everything, all the properties of the sprite that you cloned it from. Yeah, but now we have working movement for our enemy. But next, we need to make the player die when the player hits the enemy. And that's actually a challenge for you. It is done basically the same as the dying from the spikes. So try to do it on your own, pause the video, and come back when you've done it. Were you able to do that? If so, congratulations. If not, worry not. We are going to do it together right now. And so to do that, once again, we need to go to the event sheet. And here we can check how we did the spike. We check if the player is on collision with spike, then we set the platform to be disabled. We destroy the object. Well, this platform being disabled, it was for the case if you are using the die animation or death animation instead of destroy. Then we wait for 1 second and we restart the layout. Well, there's two ways we can do this. First one is to, well, we can copy and paste this and change the spike to be the enemy, and that would work. But because we are using the free version of the construct, we have limited amount of events. Actually, I want to do it a different way, and it is something that we highlight this on collision with spike. Then we right click and make this OR block. And what it means, we can add a new condition here. Again, we checked if the player is on collision with the enemy. Press done. So now we will do these actions if the player hits the spike or if the player hits the enemy. So that way we can put them in the same event and save one extra event for later in our project. But here it's important that you remember change this condition to be OR block. So, or it's usually the AND block, so it will check that both of them has to be happening so that we can do this, but it's not possible because this is a trigger. So there can be only one trigger event condition in AND block. But if we make it OR block, then we can make multiple trigger events or conditions. And you can, if you don't know how to know if it's trigger or not, this green arrow will indicate that this condition will be a trigger. And if this would be a AND block and we would try to make another condition, you can see that there isn't the on collision with another object option anymore, because there can be only one condition with this green arrow. And if we make it OR block, we can make another one right here. And it's the enemy. And press done. Let's try our game. The enemy moves correctly, and if we touch it, we die and reload the level. Looks like everything works. And that's everything for this episode. And I see you again in the next one, where we will be adding collectibles to our game. See you then.